For what feels like an eternity, I have been trapped in the world of dark romance. I've sat in on its autopsies, I've scrolled through endless critical TikToks, I've read countless bad reviews, and I've come away with the same frightened reverence as Victor Frankenstein, the movie version, at least.
Look, it's moving.
The monster is still alive. The colliginous heart of the genre beats on. One half of the internet is haunted by dark romance. They're disgusted by what the genre portrays, terrified of the message it sends to impressionable people. The other half, girl, they're just happy to be here. Either way, dark romance has the world in a chokehold. Go into any bookstore, peruse any book-related hashtag, ask your friends what they read in the dead of night, and you'll find that dark romance is as popular as ever. But popularity doesn't mean understanding. For all the ways pop culture is saturated by dark stories of love and love lost, we have yet to actually understand any of it. Our culture is in a bit of a bind, as am I. Can what we hate teach us about what we love? While dark romance has become public enemy #1 in the last few years, I would argue that the genre is heavily misunderstood. At the very least, it's unexplored. Dark romance is our key to understanding desire, the overarching romance genre, and maybe even ourselves. Let's look closer. Dark romance is, as the name implies, an offshoot of the romance genre. It uses the lust of fanfiction and the thrills of horror to create something borderline blasphemous. And I like blasphemy. One definition describes dark romance as a subgenre of romance that's all about the messy, complicated, and twisted side of love and relationships. It sometimes explores themes of violence, abuse, and trauma, and delves into taboo themes like power dynamics, obsession, and fear. While a lot of popular titles feature dubious consent or even non-consent, there are others that don't. Dark romance is a spectrum, going from gray to pitch black. The titles you would find here would look like a fluffy rom-com compared to those you would find here. But the entire niche follows the same formula. Dark romance centers two distinct characters: the beloved and the lover. The lover is dangerous. Sometime before the start of the narrative, they experienced total damnation, a fall from grace. In their new life, they exist only on the edge of society, a demotion that they feel they deserve.
It means if you were smart, you'd stay away from me.
They are brooding, repulsive, and seductively misanthropic. The irony is, as much as they hate the world, they also affect and are affected by it. As Deborah Lutz argues, the dangerous lover, quote, reflects to varying degrees the blight of the dark world and its wastelands. All the evils of the world are brought to bear on this character. He commits them and they are done to him. He sins and is victimized by the heaviest moral travesties. Dangerous lovers are mafia bosses, gang members, or worse, one-dimensional vessels used to disseminate anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. QAnon fanfiction in your dark romance novel? It's more likely than you think. In the midst of their darkness, dangerous lovers attempt to love and be loved, despite their flaws. The object of their affection, the beloved, usually represents everything they lack. The beloved is meek, where the lover is bold, sweet, where the lover is grumpy, wealthy, where the lover is destitute, or vice versa. Their dalliance is mutualistic, like that of a clownfish and sea anemone. They fill in each other's gaps, protect each other, and attempt to teach each other new ways of being. The love affair is always doomed, though, in one capacity or the other. Even if they receive a happily ever after, the characters still face some kind of challenge or social otherization as a result of their romance. For example, in Prisoner by Annika Martin and Skye Warren, the beloved Abigail Winslow chooses to live off-grid forever with her escaped prisoner lover. Since the dangerous lover sits on the outside of society, like Lucifer himself, They seduce their beloved into total damnation right alongside them. By loving the dangerous lover, the beloved is usually self-exiled and lives gloriously, freely on the outskirts of society. Falling from grace and falling in love is synonymous in the world of dark romance.
I can mean no peace for us. Me misery, my greatest happiness.
An interesting misconception about dark romance is its age. Most of the popular titles you see on BookTok were released in the 2020s or the mid to late 2010s. But the subgenre goes so much deeper than that. It is stuttered through time, growing popular and falling into obscurity over and over again. While it has worn different faces and gone by different names, the bones of it have remained the same. I think we like to characterize dark romance as a new, small niche because, in part, it helps to strengthen the hate campaign against it. If something is new, we think humanity has no stakes in it. We can eradicate it and justify our eradication of it, because we think we've existed thus far without it. While that may be true for evil things like generative AI, it's different for literature. Very little of our culture has escaped the mark of dark romance, no matter how far back you go. We as humans are thrilled by it, obsessed even.
I could be wrong, but that may not be the best way to win the girl's affection.
Gothic romance, for instance? Now that's mother. Specifically late 19th century and early 20th century Gothic romance, that's where contemporary dark romance gets most of its cues. Early Gothic romances, like Anne Radcliffe's A Sicilian Romance, tended to feature pious heroes and evil villains. Unlike with today's media, you are not supposed to like the bad guys. They served as a barricade between the beloved and the virtuous, heroic lover. To put it academically, they were cockblocks. But the bad guys were also interesting, even more so than maybe even the heroes. Stories need tension, and in these Gothic narratives, tension is usually driven by the villain. Characterization also plays a big part in the appeal. Where Gothic villains are erotically complex and fascinating, Gothic heroes lack tension. They're effortless and easy to read. As the genre progressed, so did the formula. Authors began to combine the villain and the lover. There is no better example than Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, though its status as a romance novel is heavily debatable. I love this book. This is like 19th century Zeus Network. This is like if Bad Girls Club and Jersey Shore were written in purple prose. Girl, it's messy. Wuthering Heights is a novel about flawed people who do unfathomable things to each other. Take it from this 1838 review. There is not in the entire dramatis personae a single character which is not utterly hateful or thoroughly contemptible. If you do not detest the person, you despise him, and if you do not despise him, you detest him with your whole heart. Heathcliff is the brooding, dangerous lover who exists on the periphery of society, not just because his lack of wealth, but because he's coded as a person of color, though you would never know that based off casting choices alone. Laurence Olivier did play him in 1939, which Hollywood thinks is close enough, apparently. Catherine and Heathcliff's love, just like any other dark romance, is doomed from the beginning. Catherine is already dead at the start of the novel, and she quite literally haunts the narrative. As Deborah Lutz writes, "It is only in fragments or specters that their love can be, if ever, fulfilled." Desire as a background to utter agony is where Wuthering Heights shines. As awful as these characters come to be, they still love and ask to be loved, the very formula of dark romance. A different 1848 review states, "The reader is shocked, disgusted, almost sickened by details of cruelty, inhumanity, and the most diabolical hate and vengeance, and in come passages of powerful testimony to the supreme power of love, even over demons in the human form." Another precursor to dark romance is the historical erotic romance, aka the bodice ripper. These became especially popular in the 1970s and the 1980s. You might recognize them by their culturally iconic covers, which feature shirtless, towering men and beautiful chiffon-wrapped women. Like the dark romances of today, bodice rippers tended to be sexually explicit. They sometimes even feature scenes of sexual assault. Some have argued that acts of sexual violence were common in this era due to the social pressures of the time. The Flame and the Flower by Kathleen E. Woodiwiss, for example, was published in 1972, and, quote, features sex that often resembles rape than seduction. Sex scenes were written this way to protect the virtue of the heroine, since depictions of women having consensual and especially premarital sex was frowned upon at the time. Really ridiculous. Bodice rippers also focus on power. Deborah Lutz argues that the dangerous lover often relinquishes control at some point in the narrative, opting to grovel for the beloved's forgiveness and affection, which some consider to be a transfer of power. It's such a popular trope that it remains integral to dark romance today. I think some readers consider it a form of atonement, tangible proof that the dangerous lover has changed for the better. I've also noticed that when a dark romance story doesn't feature this so-called transfer of power, readers tend to be more disappointed with the outcome. You can't talk about dark romance without talking about fanfiction. I was there when the dark magic was written, literally. I was 13 years old reading Dark, the infamous Harry Styles fanfiction turned Hollywood franchise. Dark became such a cultural phenomenon that it spawned an entire fanfic subgenre. Every other body of work from 2012 onward was about a character or celebrity who had gone rogue. They had tattoos, piercings, and jewel-toned orbs that peered into your very soul. Fanfiction is the OG dark romance for a few different reasons. The behavior of these dark doppelgangers was diabolical, villainous, some may even say dastardly. They were the internet's answer to past gothic lovers. I used to read the hell out of some Tom Riddle fanfiction. Tom Riddle being the human version of Lord Voldemort. Don't judge me, okay? I loved dark, usually emo characters growing up. You could not tell middle school me anything about Eli Goldsworthy. That was my man. Don't get 9-year-old me started on Prince Zuko. The subject matter of these fanfictions was also bleak. The beloved usually struggled with depression or loneliness. They were sometimes suicidal or self-harmers. In the more memeable tropes, the beloved was sold off by an abusive parent to the entirety of One Direction. It was a way for real people to find catharsis in fiction, to feel at home in a society that they felt had discarded them. Fanfiction writers were also extremely well-versed in tagging their work with content warnings, a practice that is becoming increasingly popular in dark romance today. As you can see, dark romance is vast. There are books you might have read, movies you might have watched, songs and artists you might have listened to that today would be labeled dark romance. It's an insidious romantic formula. So common is it that Deborah Lutz argues, perennially present, the dangerous lover narrative has become the conventional way to represent erotic desire and romantic love. And so you get movies like The Notebook, that, while not stereotypical in its depiction of a brooding lover, still finds the charm in a man threatening to kill himself in front of a woman who says no to his advances. You get The Great Gatsby, which is obviously not a love story, but it plays one on TV. Jay Gatsby is so obsessed with the idea of Daisy Buchanan that he's willing to stalk her and center his entire new life around hers, going so far as to show her a collection of newspaper clippings he had saved of her in a 5-year span. You get Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey, which are self-explanatory. You get Gossip Girl, and Gossip Girl, and Gossip Girl again. In less extreme cases, you get Pride and Prejudice, where a seemingly unsociable, biased man enters a dalliance with a, dare I say, vibrant, quirky woman. These are all narratives that, to differing degrees, depict complicated, flawed, and darkly romantic affairs plagued by love, hate, and desire, and whatever Gossip Girl was. This is the importance of dark romance. When we analyze it, we begin to realize how integral it is to pop culture and the romance genre in general. Dark romance is merely the culmination of our long-standing cultural obsession with brooding, dangerous lovers and the stories they spin. Just because something has existed for a long time doesn't mean we can't critique it though. I'm able to acknowledge that the dark romances I consumed as a child were about deeply flawed, if not dangerous people. People I would be scared of in real life. Pop culture is influential. Therefore, some topics must be handled with responsibility and skill. Two things not every aspiring artist has. In that same vein, another gripe I tend to have with the genre is that it claims to explore the darker side of human psychology, but some of its major contemporary titles feel shallow or incomplete. They die on the sword of 2010's edginess, to the point where it feels like I'm watching that awful Senorita Awesome clip, except for some reason it's set in Riverdale.
Name?
Senorita Awesome.
What makes something dark? And why is it always a pale, white, skinny, dark-haired, blue-eyed, kinky, stalker, coffee and cigarettes, all black Tumblr, Tate Landon formula? Those things are cool, but they can become extremely dated. They fail to exist further than the era in which they were published. There's no malleability or immortality attached to it. Furthermore, audiences can be very uncritical of what they consume to the point of recklessness. They may blur the lines between fiction and reality, or shield the genre from any and all valid criticism. However, audiences at large are not brainless zombies. Yeah, there's a few stragglers in there. People who read horror or fictional crime stories know that killing is wrong. People who watch Fast and Furious should know that illegal street racing is dangerous. Do they? I don't know if they do, actually. People who watch The Walking Dead or Scandal or Game of Thrones understand the difference between television and reality. I assume most dark romance readers view the genre like they would any other. These are pieces of batshit, if not blood-curdling fiction. They're not etiquette books. And also, I don't want to fall into that kind of, it's just a book, it's just fiction kind of argument, because books and fiction, the things we consume, matter. What I just said, like a few seconds ago. Would it be so terrible to treat dark romance like the subgenre it is? Could we go further than simply condemning it as a whole and instead dedicate ourselves to dissecting it, analyzing it, critiquing it, and loving it? I ask this not only of dark romance, but of the entire romance genre. This is the only category we dare not treat like art. You can't write essays about romance. It's not serious enough. You can't uncover themes or character progression or cultural impact about romance. It's not deep enough. Analysis is reserved for highbrow work. Romance is treated like a shopping catalog. Everything else gets to be art. For those uninitiated, I run a free newsletter on Substack called Toe, where my viewers can submit their opinions on a topic ahead of a video. I don't analyze or deconstruct the messages, I just let them exist as they are, spoken by my viewers. Let's see who wrote in. The first letter reads, "As an adult now, I think a lot of the issues with dark romance comes down to the gender essentialism that is at the core of the power dynamics. Not to be an academic and say that there needs to be a queering of dark romance, but I think that if people were able to examine the gender essentialism and traditional heterosexual power dynamics at the heart of the dark romance trend, we might end up with a more versatile, creative, and unique collection of romance literature where power dynamics can be explored without them being dependent upon gender." The next letter reads, "I am a woman with a lot of patriarchal trauma and some sexual trauma, so the subject matter often portrayed in dark romance is not only off-putting to me, but I also have a very visceral reaction to reading about it within the context of romance as a genre. However, I will forever remain an avid defender of dark romance. I don't think that the appeal to readers is in the actions portrayed themselves. I think the appeal to readers is in the genre allowing the female character, and thus the reader may be projecting themselves onto her, to be absolved of responsibility and thus absolved of the judgment and social sanctions that come with perceived promiscuity and the social demand for chastity. Dark subject matter in romance books can be a healthy and safe way to explore desires that may be a bit darker. It can be a way to cope with personal trauma, to gain clarity, and distance yourself from the situation by engaging with dark and sometimes oppressive fictional dynamics. I also thought it would be interesting to hear from young people, primarily because Protect the Children seems to be at the forefront of the discourse surrounding dark romance. This letter reads, "My friend and I turned 18 a while ago, so no age rating is going to stop us now. But the point I'm making is that teens want to know about sex. Plain and simple. It's one of the most interesting topics you could bring up, at least for most teens. It certainly was for me. But as we know, no one seems to want to talk about sex with teens. All I got in terms of sex ed was a little paragraph in the biology textbook that went something along the lines of P and V and then baby. And that was that. If you're queer, you can only turn to the internet for information. Teens will be fine if parents do their job and educate their kids and actually talk to them. The solution is sex education that actually accounts for the fact that we live in a society, and that sex is not as simple or as hetero as our biology textbooks try to tell us that it is." The next letter reads, "As we are now, I agree that dark romance is problematic." Trademark. Not any individual work of the genre, but the patterns more broadly. The genre is very het, largely white, almost exclusively male dom. Taken as a trend and as a genre, it corrals our erotic imagination into one default heteropatriarchal way of being. This is increasingly seen as the only way to get horny about power and suffering. Anything that reverses or disrupts the dynamic is seen as an outlier or a try-hard deconstruction. Your only options become 1. Wanting the powerful man to possess the ingenue, and he's effortlessly her better in all socially important ways, richer and smarter, older and sophisticated. And 2. Perfectly healthy equality in all fictional relationships forever. That becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where those who just don't kink on this, people who like femdom, who prefer queer stories, who want the abuser to die gruesomely because that's what's hottest to them, etc., well, they eventually gravitate away from dark romance. And the default becomes even more entrenched. And straying away from the default becomes even more unpopular, inevitably feeling like someone's casting judgment from the outside in. The last letter reads, "I think there needs to be more acknowledgement that this is a really common thing among survivors. Sexuality usually isn't something we can consciously control. I put a lot of therapeutic effort into shifting mine, and it's super difficult. And sweeping romanticization under the rug as problematic is not helpful. I don't identify as kinky, but I'm grateful to that community for putting so much thought and praxis into figuring out how people with non-normative sexualities can have satisfying, consensual, and usually safe sex. I think the kink community is a great example of how destigmatization of desire and accepting a wide range of identities and experiences can lay the groundwork for open and honest discussion about sex, which then creates strong community values around consent, with multiple models/schools of thought being considered. In my opinion, kinky people have moved the conversation around sexual violence forward and provided lots of valuable insights and ideas about sex, and dark romance lovers are very much included in that lineage. People can have whatever opinions they like on kink, dark romance, and etc. But if you're going to use social shaming as a weapon, remember that it's a bomb, not a gun. You can't specify the target, and you don't know how many civilian casualties your attack might incur. Yes, it's problematic, but a lot of the time, because of my extreme trauma history, I find I have more in common with an AO3 smut protagonist than most other characters I read about. So when I see people point at dark romance and opine on how horrific and disgusting and unacceptable it is, all I can think is, that's me. You're talking about me. Dark romance is defined by 2 acts, unraveling and becoming. Desire drives both. Who want me? Do you want me? Please want me, but don't want me because wanting me would extinguish the wanting. It would extinguish the desire. I'm disgusted by your wanting and depressed by my own. Sappho once called Eros bittersweet. Desire is a contradictory existence, erotic paradox. As humans, we're endlessly drawn to this contradiction. Our most haunting emotions are oxymoronic. Grief is a mixture of desire and sorrow. Jealousy is desire, fear, and resentment set on fire. And guilty pleasure, the torrent of excitement, cringe, and controlled passion, both delights us and terrifies us all the same. These contradictions are explored thoroughly in dark romance. Sappho also considers eros to be defined by absence. You desire what you cannot and will not have. Once you have it, desire for it ceases to exist. Crushes are a great example. Liking someone, wanting them to like you, is thrilling. If they don't like you back, you're crushed. But your desire for them isn't. You pine longer, you want harder, knowing that you'll never have them. If they do like you back, well, there goes your desire. Them wanting you erodes the distance between you. And maybe I'm just an avoidant daydreamer, but too much proximity kills longing. How can I yearn for something that's right next to me? As a Pisces, I'll find a way, trust me, but how? This is apparently a Platonic way of thinking. And Carson writes, 4 of Plato's dialogues explore what it means to say that desire can only be for what is lacking, not at hand, not present, not in one's possession, nor in one's being. What represents lack more than dark romance? The dangerous lover exists on the outskirts of society. They are unknowable. In the dark romance novel Nocticadia, for instance, the beloved Lilia states of the brooding Professor Bramwell, "How was it, the more I watched him, the less I knew of the man? He was a closed vault, sealed with hot molten steel that I'd never otherwise penetrate." The dangerous lover is almost mythic, unreal, inhuman. In that way, they only work in the theater of fantasy. I'm probably going to mispronounce this name. I apologize. Madeleine Katzila, author of Fantasy versus Morality, The Erotic Divide, states that dangerous lovers, quote, "are not dreamers, but perfect props in the theater of fantasy. Because in fantasy, we're not seeking safety. We're seeking tension, contrast, the delicious ache of what's just out of reach. Their detachment sharpens desire." Theater, I think, is the best word here. Romance in general, and dark romance more specifically, is larger than life. The characters who populate it can be vessels for readers to explore humanity and themselves, either through the violence they face, the setbacks they encounter, the love they experience, or the tension they work through. The main characters of dark romance learn about themselves and the world, coming away forever changed. The characters become themselves, having spent however long feckless and lost. The version of ourselves that we think is most true is the version that is most familiar to us, the one most comfortable. It's the one that fits neatly into society, amongst people and under public opinion, following trends and that kind of thing. Take, for example, Hungerstone. This is a modern retelling of the 1872 novella Carmilla. It centers Lenore, an ailing woman trapped in a marriage of convenience to her apathetic husband, Henry. Lenore believes that if she does everything right, if she maintains wealth and maintains perfect femininity, and maintains her marriage and her friendships, then she will finally be rewarded with acceptance. People pleaser final boss. But it's clear from the beginning that Lenore is not herself. She is people-pleased her way into utter obscurity. Carmilla's sudden and mysterious appearance into her life challenges Lenore in more ways than one. Like Lenore, our most authentic self rears its head, quote, "on the edge of the abyss, at the limit of darkness, of the dizzy rapture of the unknowable." And obviously, strictly a fictional trope. Don't do anything dangerous in real life. The dangerous lover as a plot device is that abyss. When the beloved meets the dangerous lover, as Lenore meets Carmilla, she, quote, "discovers what will be, in the logic of the romance, her true self, her essential being, but which she initially regards as a deeply threatening other." The pull that both lover and beloved feel at first sight is inexplicable. How can you desire something so alien? Something that sits at odds with your concept of identity. It's a world-ending incongruity. Concept of self begins to unravel as the characters question who they are and what they want. In Nocticadia, Professor Bramwell notes, "I was drawn to her, for reasons I could neither justify nor understand. Whatever was going on with me had shifted into something unrecognizable, something dark and violent, and at the center of it was a troublesome girl who had somehow corrupted me. Lilia bears the same mark of difference. Quote, "He had hooked himself into my veins and fed me with this unbridled and reckless desire. It went against everything I was, everything I believed. He had sewn me back together as something else entirely. I didn't even recognize the pining fool I had become." As the characters unravel into the void of the uncanny, they end up discovering their authentic selves. And Carson, like Deborah Lutz, argues that Eros is a place of searching. It wills you to look at the alien other, to look through them and into yourself. Eros is a call for identity, seeking that which is lost within us, that we didn't realize was missing in the first place. Eros moves out from the lover toward the beloved, then ricochets back to the lover himself and the hole within him, unnoticed before. Who is the real subject of most love poems? Not the beloved. It is that hole. When we question our holes... No, why did I write that? When we question our wounds, let's say. When we question our fears and our desires, we are finally met with understanding. The beloved and lover are the same. One soul split in two. Catherine in Wuthering Heights states, "He is more myself than I am. Whatever our souls are made of, his and mine are the same. If all else perished and he remained, I should still continue to be. And if all else remained and we were annihilated, the universe would turn to a mighty stranger. He's always, always in my mind, not as a pleasure to myself, but as my own being." This isn't a woman needs a man to tell her who she is thing, or even more generally, a romance conquers all thing. It's a reckoning with the self through interaction with the world around you. You're dancing back and forth between people, objects, and concepts. All the while, you're unlocking new things, new knowledge about yourself. When the beloved finally recognizes the similarities they share with the dangerous lover, they are reborn, figuratively for the most part, but sometimes even literally. On page 190 of Hungerstone, Lenore asks Carmilla, "What have you done to me?" And Carmilla responds, "I have set you free. It is terrible to be alive, but it is worse to be dead to ourselves." Like Eve being seduced by Lucifer, falling from grace and, incidentally, into knowledge, she tumbles down, down, down. I look up to Carmilla and see that terrible dark light in her eyes, as I know it now shines in mine. Her authentic life has just begun. What do we make of dark romance? Do we love it? Do we hate it? Should we censor it? Should we gather all romance media in a shed and burn it? Well, no. That's obviously a slippery slope. What we want censored doesn't stay censored, and what we think needs to be censored usually precedes the censorship of everything else. Also, as we have seen, the genre, or the bones of the genre, has existed for centuries. I fear it's not going anywhere. Narratives will not always be healthy or good. They will not always be realistic. Sometimes, a body of work is meant to tell a story about the human condition, in order to dislodge any truths or fears that we can find. I think of the books I have on my shelf that depict much worse than dark romance does. Toni Morrison's Bluest Eye, Let the Right One In by John Lindqvist, books about horrible, horrible things. Terrible things. Disgusting things. But both books are extremely well written and extremely cognizant of people. The Bluest Eye especially masters discussions of race and abuse, and the complexities and terrors of being forgotten, being ignored, especially as a young, poor Black girl. This book and other books, including Let the Right One In, and even Lolita, are complicated books. None of them romanticize what they portray, though in the case of Lolita, Hollywood simply cannot help itself. But if you were to go to the one-star reviews of these books, you would think that they are instructional guides on how to commit heinous crimes. The Bluest Eye was even the top 10 most banned book of the 2010s, right above The Kite Runner and The Hunger Games. These books are obviously different from dark romance in the way they portray their relationships, but I think the point that I'm trying to make is that there will always exist something uncomfortable or heinous. Writers have a responsibility to portray these things with as much clarity and heart as possible, just as any other artist does. And we should probably have a discussion about marketing choices soon, but I digress. The audience has a responsibility too. It seems that our fear of difficult and contradictory media really leads back to the fear of audiences not getting it. We're afraid that audiences will be influenced to try this at home, and this is certainly a valid fear. But I think what we're most afraid of is declining media literacy. Why don't we campaign on that instead of censorship? Why don't we teach people of all ages, not just young people, how to contend with a work? What, if anything, can you grab from it? What does it make you feel? What does it say? What does it do? Why? What part of it confuses you or makes you uncomfortable? Why? What has the author said about the work? What does our culture say about it? Why?
Why?
Audiences need to read more, think more, watch more, actively engage with what they're reading, thinking, and watching. Poke holes in a body of work and then patch it back up if desired. Don't just let it pass you by. All of it, the writing and the reading, is messy work. It's turbulent work. But sometimes, within reason and done carefully, it can be fascinating work. Are those my yeah, those are my violent delights. And they've come to an end. I thought so. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. And also make sure to check out my Patreon, where I do one exclusive video per month in order to swindle you out of your hard-earned cash. If you want even more content from me, you can check out my second channel, where the clone I keep locked in my basement comes out once in a blue moon and does pop culture commentary. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next month. Bye!